Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar, The Future of Insights and Market Research in the AI Era. We're thrilled to have you join us for what promises to be a highly engaging and thought-provoking discussion as we navigate this era of rapid technological advancement. The role of insights and market research has never been more critical. AI is reshaping our industry and offering unprecedented opportunities to gather, analyze, and act on data faster and more accurately than ever before. Today, we're going to explore how these developments are transforming the way the businesses make strategic decisions and what this means for insights professionals, from early careers to more seasoned veterans. And to guide us through these topics, we're very fortunate to have a panel of distinguished industry leaders from various sectors. And before I get to them, I'll introduce myself. My name is David Flach. I am a senior marketing manager here at Bloomfire. And one of our panelists today is Dan Stradtman. Dan is the chief marketing officer here at Bloomfire, and he brings over 2 decades of expertise in transforming insights into action. Dan, I'll hand it over to you to introduce the rest of our guests.
Yeah, thank you, David, as always. Really excited to be able to have this discussion today. We're going to dive into a few key areas. One of those is, I think in the last 2 years, AI has really had a transformative impact. And so one of the things we want to talk about today is how is AI accelerating that pace of research, allowing us to get to faster, more precise insights, and also acting as a valuable tool alongside the expertise that humans have. We'll talk a little bit about the strategic role of insights, how that's changed a little bit, how professionals are increasingly influencing major business decisions at companies, and making sure that the work can continue to drive those tangible outcomes. Get a little bit of perspective from the panel on kind of lessons across the industry. So, sectors can have different mechanisms for action: retail, CPG, technology, and what can we learn from those differences to stay ahead of the curve in this fast-moving market. And lastly, we'll touch on career growth. Much like that first topic, AI. What are some maybe practical strategies from folks who've been doing this for a while as you think about advancing your careers, you think about acquiring those skills that are going to be relevant in the AI era and positioning yourself to grow into leadership or to continue to expand your leadership capabilities. We've hopefully designed this webinar for everyone, whether you're just starting out in market research or whether you've been in the field for years. Our goal is to really be able to provide that path actionable insight and strategies to help you stay ahead of the game. It's my great pleasure to introduce 2 of my co-panelists here who I've known personally for almost 20 years each. They've been extremely instrumental in my career as partners, as bosses in some case, and we're really getting, in both of them, kind of the cream of the crop when it comes to insights careers. So first off, Robert Atencio. Robert's got 30 years of experience working across well-known brands like Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola, Frito-Lay, Walmart, Pfizer. He was a senior vice president in those companies where he led domestic insights, global insights, and very large insights and strategy teams. He's won numerous awards for that research excellence, including an ARF Great Minds Award. He's the founder and CEO of Atencio Insights, and a good friend of mine as well. And Wendy Wallner is an EVP at Ipsos, which really is the world's largest market research and polling company. She's had a fabulous career. She currently leads client relationships across key retailers and restaurants in the US. And in this position, she's acting as an advocate for clients, and she really is bringing those best possible solutions and experts together to solve client business issues. Her and I have worked together at multiple stops along the way where her teams have helped me have success on the client side as well. So a great resource. And so, Wendy, we'll start off. I'll lead off the questions. I'll kick it back to David. But just starting, in your view, how has the market research industry and consumer insights industry evolved maybe in the past 5 years or so? What have you seen?
Well, yeah, it's a big transformation. I mean, I think back 20 years ago, or actually, I'll admit it, I'm like Robert, 30 years ago, where I made a decision to switch from marketing to market research, and I've never regretted it. But if I was starting my career 5 years ago, I might have been a data scientist. And if I was starting my career today, I might seek a job in AI, although I'm not even sure what jobs exist yet. But it's been a lot of change with the rise of big data, transactional data, social data, data science, AI. What's happened is that's democratized insights across organizations. And so what that means is insights groups are no longer the owners of insights. Everyone, or a lot of groups, own insights. Now, that could threaten an insights organization, but it also creates opportunity, because what's happened is information has gotten more complex. There's no single source of truth anymore. Yet CMOs and CEOs and boards actually want a single source of truth. So it behooves the insights leaders and teams to embrace that and act as information aggregators and seek that single source of truth, become the business translators. They're the ones best positioned to integrate the what and the why and become the human storytellers along the way. And I think that's a great opportunity, but requires some work. Not all organizations are set up that way to do that, but it's something to strive for.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Wendy. And Robert, coming over to you. So Wendy touched on a few of the challenges there, but what do you believe are the biggest challenges facing the industry today?
Well, thanks, David. I think there are a number of challenges, but I'm going to talk about just a few. I want to read a paragraph from an article I saw recently. The world is too big for us, too much going on. Try as you will, you get behind in the race in spite of yourself. It's an incessant strain to keep pace, and still you lose ground. Science empties its discoveries on you so fast that you stagger beneath them in hopeless bewilderment. The political world is news seen so rapidly, you're out of breath trying to keep pace with who's in and who's out. Everything is high pressure. Human nature can't endure much more. That's from the Atlantic Journal, June 16th, 1833, almost 200 years ago. So change is on the way, and it is a challenge, but it always has been. This time, I think it is a bit different. I think expectations will be an important challenge, especially related to budgets and timing. With all the new technology, senior leadership will expect you to be able to spend less and go faster. But the truth is, you'll probably need to spend more and go a little slower as you vet new tools and methods. Another big challenge is data quality. AI will need the right data to be successful. At a big company I worked for, the board of directors, they were challenging senior leadership. And they were asking them, why aren't we doing more with AI? So they decided to fund some experiments for different parts of the company, and I was funded for one of those experiments. In the end, it was a bit of a disaster because the supplier could not access the data they really needed, even though they promised they could. And the data they could access led to some very odd results. So I was lucky. I had the time and the money to test this. And this kept us from making some big mistakes. So there will be a number of challenges ahead, but two to watch out for. One, managing expectations, and two, data quality that feeds the new technologies.
Thanks, Robert. Good to know that my ancestors went through some of the same problems that we go through today. And that's a good sort of encapsulation of market research today. But let's move over to vendor versus client side perspectives. And Wendy, we'll come to you for this question. So having spent a lot of your career as a research vendor, how do you ensure that you are understanding the needs of the client side companies, especially in fast moving industries?
Well, that's essentially my job. I'm a research generalist, so I don't specialize in any particular methodology or area of research, but what I do specialize in are industry sectors. So I represent retail and restaurants at Ipsos, and it's my job to understand their needs. That's 100% of my job, and to make sure Ipsos understands those needs and is well equipped with the solutions that will meet those needs. But that sector industry focused is helpful for me because I learn about the universal needs fairly easily, like redefining value in inflationary times or innovating to optimize shopping experiences. Those are universal needs that are pretty common across retail and restaurants. But what's nuanced is when I want to, and obviously I do, understand the specific needs, because every company client is on a different style of journey, understand specific needs, and I stay close to the work that we do. I don't actually do any of the research, but I stay very close in partnering and offering expertise where I can, in hopes that I can earn the right to have those conversations about, okay, where else can we help you? What's important to you? And from an operational standpoint, where it makes sense, with my top clients, we do quarterly joint business planning where we take time to meet and iron out how we can better support their priorities and key initiatives. So that helps as well.
Yeah, great. And if I can ask a follow-up or perhaps related is Wendy, what trends have you seen in how clients are leveraging research consultancies and what's changing in those expectations?
Well, some things never change, right, David? So it's a people business. It's probably always going to be a people business. Our clients want to work with people that they personally trust to do quality work and are timely and responsive. But there are some things that have really changed. Robert touched on speed. I mean, that's become a main imperative, especially in fast-moving industries like retail and restaurants. And you know, everyone that they partner with, so CPG companies, et cetera, we have to deliver insights much faster than we've ever had to before. But at the same time, our clients, having been burned by some newish tools that do get to insights faster, they've learned that, with some there's compromises. So the expectation now is speed without compromise. So still having quality, pretty much, please do not trade off anything, but still give me that speed. Secondly, I think there's a big imperative towards research ROI, not doing research for the sake of doing research, but only doing it when you can demonstrate an impact. Third, there's definitely an expectation around foresight. So don't just tell me what's happening now, tell me what's coming next. And lastly, I would say, and this is probably always on the list, storytelling, good storytelling. And I think as things do have to move more quickly, storytelling becomes even more important as you have to distill all the research down into consumable bite-sized chunks.
Yeah.
So I think that's, to me, how the expectations have changed around my client relationships.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And Dan, coming over to you. So I know that you have, well, I've heard some of your stories, speaking of storytelling and some of the leadership roles that you've held. I know we didn't go into, all of your credentials, but, what are you looking at from the vendors that you choose to work with? If you think back to those leadership roles, like what's your evaluation criteria?
Yeah, thanks, David. Very kind of you to say you've heard the stories and not have been subjected to them, by the way. Appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I think, Wendy's mentioned a few. I'll double click and I'll add on one or two of hers and I'll add. So the storytelling aspect is critical. It's within the context of how we wanted to deliver that story. So we very much had put in processes in some of the roles I've had to make sure that we weren't just being delivered a research report, that we were being delivered a narrative to go along with that. I think one of the things you learn as you've reached the highest levels of an organization at bigger companies in insights or marketing is, the teams that you need to influence have a very finite amount of time. And so you need to be able to distill that down into the key points very readily. If I can get vendors to do a lot of that heavy lifting to help up front, moving away from that 100-page research report, which is all valuable information that we need to create that record. But if I, the hardest PowerPoint to write isn't a 100-page report, it's a 10-page report or 1 page of insight, right? So I think, that's something that I always look for there. I think having that keen understanding of how we make money is something that is oftentimes lost on research vendors. Wendy mentioned the alignment to the industries. I think that's a great start, right? She understands how retail and restaurant makes money, so that as she's bringing together the right team of researchers to solve a client's problems, that is top of mind in terms of what you influence, right? I can't tell you, in the different roles I've had, and I've had, retail roles, I've had B2C, I've had B2B2C, I've had B2B to B2C, right? And so there was a lot of cases where we would trial a vendor and they would come back with recommendations of, oh, you need to do this at the shelf or this at the brand. And in reality, we didn't own the shelf or we didn't own the brand. We were trying to influence the company that was making the brand or influence the company that was deciding on the shelf. And that little nuance is really meaningful because it completely changes the recommendations for action based off of research. So, I don't know if that's a change necessarily, but I think as a prioritization, if I was sitting on the vendor side, and it's something I do in my role now at Bloomfire, right, as we're partnering with insights teams around launching insights engines and knowledge management systems, is, hey, how are you going to be graded? How are you going to be judged? What are the key OKRs that your company has, and how can we align this initiative to that? Taking that approach, I believe, is a differentiator for a vendor kind of reaching out to a client-side researcher.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I appreciate that insight. And Robert, I want to come over to you. So you've had, a fairly storied career, as Dan mentioned, and you've worked in many different industries, CPG, retail, and now you're consulting. And I'm curious, does the approach to insights work differ across the industries that you've worked in? And are there commonalities that ring true across all of them?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, David. So let's think about my career path. So I started at P&G, and there's kind of a steady pace. Let's get things done. I went to Coke, and it was faster. They have bottlers there to help with distribution. From there, I went to Frito-Lay, and they were even faster. They had their own sales force. We're moving. We've got to get things on the shelf. And then I landed at Walmart, and that was incredibly fast. Picture yourself in a meeting on Tuesday. We need an answer by Thursday to change things in the stores by Friday to impact $1 billion in sales over Saturday and Sunday. So everything going fast. Then I ended up at Pfizer, a pharmaceutical company. And it felt like we were slamming the brakes on in a cartoon. How the eyes pop out. It was different. Legal needs to see this. Medical needs to see this. Regulatory needs to approve this. So it was a very different pace. Everybody worked hard every day. There was plenty to do, but just getting studies in or out the door and results back, it did take a lot longer. And those were some differences. So in addition to speed, see 3 other differences. Budgets can be very different. Staffing can be very different. And risk tolerance. And these differences aren't just by industry. This is an important point. They can be different at a more granular level. Like a brand within a company from another brand within that same company can be managed very differently. When I think about what is similar, I think it's the need to get beyond just taking orders and giving answers. All industries, all companies, all brands want to get to real insights that generate impact for the business. Driving the business is universal.
Thanks, Robert. And so one of the aspects there, I would imagine, is making sure that the research that you're doing is getting seen. So, Robert, I'll come back to you. What strategies have you found effective in working with operators and senior execs in making sure that insights are acted upon and not just kind of put on the shelf or buried in a folder somewhere?
Yeah, but let me tell you a quick story. I was at Frito-Lay, and on my own, I was working on this big idea. I was getting all the data together, and I said, this could really impact our strategy. I was pretty excited about it. I showed it to my boss, and he goes, This is fantastic. I'm going to put you in front of the executive committee. I want you to share this. I was like, wow, I've never been in front of the executive committee. So they put me up there and I share my ideas. I lay it all out. And then it was really quiet. And the CEO says, I don't get it. And then the president right next to him says, oh, I get it. I just don't care. So for my first big meeting in front of executive committee, I had, I don't know, and I don't care. So a bit deflated, going out of the meeting, I see my boss. I'm like, oh, sorry about that. He goes, oh, no, that was fantastic. Everybody in the audience loved it. They were getting it. No, stick with it. And that was it. That's where he left me. So I did. And over the next 4 months, I kept getting more information. I kept fine-tuning the communication. And then I had another chance. It was strategic planning time, and I was going to be in front of the CEO again. And I shared my idea. And he loved it, actually embraced it. And within 8 months, it was part of a strategy that was shared with Wall Street. So we'd consider that a big success, right? The key is, though, you have to be tenacious, right? There's a certain inertia to most businesses. It makes it harder to drive significant change. So you have to have your evidence, but you also have to have very convincing communication. Don't underestimate the power of your own passion. No one's closer to the data, no one's closer to the insight, so you should be bringing that passion to the presentations. But then understand the senior executives at a human level. I find it fascinating that someone can do research for a living and not take the time to learn more about the key managers above them. It is a real advantage when you communicate in the context of your audience's needs, especially when they're the senior leaders.
Yeah, that's really good. I really appreciate that. Humanizing the executives. I think that's a really a good approach to forming that storytelling. We need to go back to one of your points earlier. Dan, building on what Robert said, how do you successfully advocate for research budgets and demonstrate the value to certain leaders?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think, just really great insights from Robert on that. And, I'll add to it maybe in 3 quick ways: one quantitative, one qualitative, and then one technology based. So the quantitative side of it is, I think one of the shifts we've seen is just, Robert mentioned budgets being different. I've had, I've got the chance to work at some companies where budgets were large. Most of the stops I've had have been fairly frugal, right? Where we've had to figure out and prioritize, and whether it's based off resource or dollars. And so, being able to tell a compelling story about that return on investment of research, even when it's farther away from the end sale or the end metric, right? Having worked at a chemical company that was obviously feeding into a value chain where the end product is 2, 3, 4 steps away, that required some very creative ways to kind of get at how do you create an ROI story around that. And we did it kind of with a combination of, here's the number of studies we're working on, here's the topics of the stories of the research we're working on, and tying that to some manner of TAM or SAM or opportunity, and then where are the commercial opportunities we're working on that we could tie to real dollars. So with that combination, that, I wouldn't say it was the differentiator, but it certainly helped allow us to kind of get funding we needed and live to fight another day. So that's the quantitative side. The qualitative side is sometimes they just need to see it in action. And, I'll bring a story from my time at GE at lighting, right? Where we were working, the big thing there is shelf space, right? We need to get shelf space because if there's more light bulbs on the shelf with the GE brand, there's more likelihood they're going to buy. And so we were working with a fairly large, well-known home improvement store. I won't say which one, but we had a new CEO in the role. He was from the finance side, and he really didn't have an experience working on the consumer side, and especially understanding kind of like what the value of insights or market research was. But we went down to visit that retailer's executives, had a session with them around kind of our growth trajectory and how we were going to grow together. A big portion of that was, here's the research we've done, here's our understanding of the consumer, here's our understanding of your shopper, and how that translates to what we're proposing for the shelf. And that was really the first chance he got to see those things in action in front of a customer. And so it was a very compelling discussion. It kind of got them engaged, and it was a very lively discussion. They didn't agree with everything, but it forced that kind of conversation, right? And I remember after it, he kind of pulled me aside and he's like, they really bought that shit, didn't they? And I was like, yeah, they did. And he's like, yeah, we need to do more of that. And I was like, okay, I can do that. And so that's kind of the qualitative aspect of it, especially in companies that maybe don't have as much maturity of understanding what insights are or what market research is. And then the last is just the technology side. You know, again, serving in the role I serve at Bloomfire, we firmly believe in the power of technology to help elevate those stories, elevate those insights. We often talk about, you know, really what we want Bloomfire to be is a megaphone for insights across an organization. You know, when I sat in a corporate role at that chemical company, it was really about how do you bring that across a wide variety of individual business units so that there was, you know, Wendy kind of kicked it off with that democratization of insights, right? One place to find that central source of truth. That was really effective in using that there. And then I would even take it a step further to say it became a real megaphone for what the team was producing, for the insights that we had as a company, and how that was going to help drive our growth.
Yeah, yeah, I love that, and I think having a megaphone and the passion that Robert was talking about, I think is a real recipe for success for a market researcher. If I can, I'd like to focus on knowledge management for a moment. So it's probably fair to say that the complexity of insights work has increased over the past 2 decades. I don't think anybody's going to argue that. And the amount of knowledge that insights professionals and companies have access to is obviously greater than ever. So, Wendy, given all this information overload, from a vendor's perspective, how have you empowered your teams to ensure that the research can cover new ground and give your partners new proprietary insight that they can act on?
Yeah, you know, it's a challenge because companies don't know what they know, because the information, unless you have the megaphone that Dan described, the companies have different pockets of information and different teams working on overlapping initiatives, and they're not sharing information all the time. And there's so many different sources. So we are often, we often see these overlapping initiatives going on and that the client doesn't even know about. So we try to connect the dots across what we know that the various teams are doing that could inform their work. And so they don't duplicate efforts either, and you know, create complementing but redundant exercises. And the other thing that's happening is insights groups, and there's one company I'm thinking of in particular where an insights leader is asking us to try to be a gatekeeper a little bit and push back on their own teams when we get a request and say, are you sure you don't have this information already available to you? Is it in your Nielsen data, for instance, which is a little interesting, given that we actually want to do research for them and instead of them going back to their data sources. But at the same time, we recognize that we don't want to duplicate efforts at all. That would be, you know, a disaster if we did a piece of research and didn't give them anything new. Now, I have seen a trend among our clients where they're picking a single vendor to hopefully, in their minds, hopefully own a topic like sustainability, having one partner to do that, to help them build on what they know so that they themselves don't have to do the heavy lifting of figuring out, okay, what have we done? I got to, you know, share this information in a way that's clear and the gaps are clear. You know, the partner can go along with them in that area. And oftentimes we will start a project by doing a discovery phase, trying to unearth and collate and summarize all the information that's available, both from our side, because we do our own research and have our own resources, and from the client side. And often we'll use AI to help us collate it and surface with key themes and gaps in their understanding. So I think it's not just one answer to all of that. It's a constant effort to try to make sure that we understand where the gaps are, regardless of where we come in on the project, so that we give the most incremental value we can.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. And we'll come back to AI in just a minute. We have AI in the title of the webinar, so we can't move on without going there. But first, Robert, over your career, how did you manage the insights to be served to the right person at the right time? So, how did you effectively structure that so people were getting sort of the right insight at the right time?
Yes, I had to deal with this a few different times in my career. So the first thing I needed to do was build a library. You can't just leave valuable information on individual computers. It becomes invisible. The library needs to be accessible. It needs to be easily searchable. And you have to create a continuous system and really a culture that quickly loads new findings into it. Because I've learned you can create the library and get all the old stuff in there, and then you'll go a year like nobody's put anything else in. You have to create that culture, right? It has to be, all right, this is a part of what I do every day, my job. The second thing you have to do is you have to train the teams to think in a way that starts with, what do we already know? So we can work on what we are lacking, right? We got to go work on the things that haven't been answered. We don't want to conduct unneeded research. And then there's another benefit. It just helps us formulate much better hypotheses when we look at all the other things that have been done.
Yeah, Dan, I know you have some perspective here as both a former customer, building insights engines with Bloomfire, and now obviously the CMO. So any thoughts to add?
Yeah, I think, Wendy and Robert have hit on a few, in practice, what Robert is saying, which is certainly something we believe very strongly here, is that, you have to have the right technology to be able to be that capture device and that megaphone, but also it is a culture change, right? There's a change management aspect to it. There's an implementation aspect to it, which, we at Bloomfire, we do that every day, right? We have those teams built and ready. The other thing I'll add, and it's maybe a little bit of a different take, is, both Wendy and Robert are kind of talking about that tangible research product, right? It's that report, it's that analysis, right? That synthesis, trends. I think that's a big piece of it. I'll also say that there's a whole bunch of knowledge that people have paid a lot of money for that should become part of that record. One of them is very simple. It's like, it's the video assets, right? And so I think those tend to get a little bit underutilized when it comes to repository, searchable, find those, right? And so the ability to have technology that can ingest those video assets and be able to return them at that point, because those have been really powerful in terms of ethnography or focus groups. Being able to go and find those and find that point where the consumer says this or the shopper says that, and then turn that around in addition to that quantitative research report that might be out there. Very, very helpful, very, very effective. The other is more that tactic knowledge that exists. So many of the companies that we've all worked at have employees who've been there a very long time, who've worked on extraordinarily important bits of research. I remember once, and there's no hubris in this, I remember talking to somebody at Walmart a few years after I left, and they're like, oh yeah, like that study you did, we're still referring to, right? And it was really powerful. That happens more often than not. And what happens to a lot of companies is, you're investing all this money in your primary research or your secondary research, but you're also investing money into the people. And so finding ways to capture that tactic knowledge, right, and create that repository around that. I've actually done that in the past where just doing simple interviews with people who have a unique perspective, have a unique experience at the company, whether it's on the R&D side or around a go-to-market strategy, around a sales process, being able to capture that and use that video asset, then you're creating this digital record of them that somewhat protects you against knowledge attrition if that person retires, if that person leaves, right? That was a huge issue during the Great Resignation. Maybe not quite as much today as it used to be, but we are still seeing a lot of very talented, a lot of folks with a lot of experience deciding, okay, I'm going to retire, I'm going to go do this. And so, I think any knowledge program or insights engine program should also have that consideration of, hey, is there any way I can add to this record and capture some of that tactic knowledge?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I do want to shift over to the impact of AI on insights today, and I think we're all aware AI has and is becoming more and increasingly prevalent in every aspect of insights work, but in overall work in general. So Wendy, coming back to you, you mentioned AI just a few moments ago. You can look across and see how AI has impacted research vendors and client-side teams, client-side across your partners. How have you seen AI reshape the way these insights teams operate, especially in terms of speed, focus, and cost efficiency?
Yeah, so talking about productivity, that's the low-hanging fruit of AI. That's the first place to get started, right? So from our side, on the vendor side, we're using it at Ipsos to help us build questionnaires, discussion guides, reports. It does a good job QCing, does an especially good job helping to analyze qualitative transcripts and interviews. Think about how much time that saves a moderator from having to go through all the film and all the transcripts. AI will pretty much do it in a blink of an eye. I will say it helps us analyze because we never take the AI product as the final version. It's usually the first draft. And it creates a lot of efficiency getting to that first draft. But we think of it as the start of a analysis, not the end. We also use it for desk research, for instance, in prepping ourselves to work in a new category. We'll use it to understand category insight or category trends. It helps us with meeting notes, meeting agendas, a whole bunch of day-to-day administrative stuff. To do that, we've developed our own AI platform that we call Ipsos Facto, and it has about 20 different AI models built into it. And I will say a lot of our clients have built their own proprietary platforms as well. Not all of them. Our tech clients are obviously way out in front on this, so they're leading the way. There's, on the other side of the spectrum, though, there's a lot of our clients that are still in the learning mode. They want to make sure that they're getting it right. So they haven't done much of anything yet. They're still exploring what the alternatives are and trying to figure out what their game plan is, and so they're in the early stages.
So, Wendy, sticking with you on the vendor side, how do you see AI technologies changing the way that consultancies approach research methodologies, particularly in areas like data collection, analysis, and then ultimately reporting?
Well, in terms of reporting, it's making us a lot more efficient. But what I'm really excited about are the tools that actually give us better answers, that give our clients a better chance of success in the marketplace. So not just faster, but better outcomes. And that's where we're spending a lot of our R&D as a research company and offering new, better tools. For instance, we can predict the success of an ad with just a couple survey questions. We can build better concepts than humans can. And we've done, particularly on the concept side, we know what makes an effective concept. We've got a lot of data, we've got a lot of, principles, KPIs that we know work. So we've created this prompt that I don't know exactly how long it is, but it's at least 16 to 20 pages long that we've fed into Ipsos Facto, and it now can create from a list of consumer needs or from a set of research insights. It can create at a push of a button better concepts than humans can. And we know that because we put it through our own testing, and it has a better chance of success in the marketplace. We've also created a tool, and this one I love, was just talking to a client about this right before this meeting, called persona bots. Every company has a segmentation, or at least target, a description of their target customer or consumer. And we teach the AI engine everything we know about that segment or target. And so then you can ping or query and chat with the segment as if it were a person, and ask it for reactions to ideas, ask it questions that was in the report, but you don't want to have time, you don't want to take the time to go back through the report. So it becomes this query tool. Again, we recommend using it for inspiration, not for decision making. It's we still want humans to make decisions, not AI, but we're getting really, really innovative with what we can do, and I'm excited. This is just the beginning.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. So Robert, Wendy mentioned there are some things that AI can do better than humans, but also Ipsos is still wants humans doing all of the work. But as you look into the future, Robert, do you see AI as a complement to human expertise in research, or as a potential threat to traditional roles?
That's a great question. To set up my answer, I'm going to share a quote I just heard. Knowledge is knowing an eggplant is a fruit, and wisdom is not putting it into a fruit salad, or not putting it in a text as an emoji to your boss. So AI is a complement. It is a tool and not yet a complete solution. I feel we'll always need human wisdom. AI will help us access more facts, more data points at speeds never before imaginable, but we will still need insights experts to connect the dots that generate the real insight and provide a common sense point of view. So for the foreseeable future, I believe AI will be a complement, but at some point it could become a threat, but mostly a threat for the people who don't change, who don't develop new skills, and who don't adapt. But this has been true throughout history.
Yeah. Dan, you have sort of a luxury to talk to many of Bloomfire customers. What have been some of the challenges that they're facing over the last 12 months as AI and technology has become more prominent?
Yeah, I think two things. One, and Wendy certainly spoke to this, like the speed is just it's happening very fast, right? And so, there's this massive push by senior leadership to do something with AI, and depending on the company, depending on the amount of resources they have, that's either going to be, we need to find a partner to help us, we need to do it ourselves, right? But it's tough, we're kind of early on to be saying we're going to place our bets here. Not to say some companies aren't doing it. Ultimately, will they be better off or not? I don't know. I think the hardest challenge, and this was something we had planned to speak about at TMRE before it was postponed, but is the rise of AI has kind of shifted some of the authority / responsibility from kind of business line managers, business managers, to that end, insights leaders, away from them having ownership over it and over to IT or to, information security departments, CTO type things. So, what used to be easy to say, all right, we're going to spend, $70,000 on this new software and try it, or we're going to, try this new feature that includes, maybe some AI, like that's getting stopped by these processes that are getting put into place at bigger companies in the name of security and in the name of like centrally locating AI, so to speak. And so that's taken some of the budget, I think, away from insights teams about what they can spend on technology. It's taken some of the authority away because they need to get additional stakeholders involved. The buying team goes from a small group of practitioners to a large group across a wide variety of folks who oftentimes in larger companies do not have the same goals in mind, right? And so I think that's been one of the bigger challenges that we've tried to help navigate some of our prospects and customers through is, hey, look, the AI story is going to suck a lot of oxygen out of the room. You may not have as much budget to do this. You may not have as much authority to do this as you did a couple of years ago. How do we help you create that business case, including kind of the security aspect, the product roadmap aspect, so that you can feel comfortable partnering with someone on this? And that's probably been in the last 12 months the largest kind of shift in that, but it's been pretty significant.
Yeah, and one of the topics of the conversations that often goes hand in hand with AI is ethics. And Wendy, you mentioned how your team uses it maybe to create drafts or as a sounding board, which I think is right. But Wendy, what ethical considerations should the industry keep in mind as we increasingly rely on AI-driven research and data insights?
Well, yeah, David, there are certainly risks, and we do our best to mitigate those risks. But the first point is to recognize they exist. So, for instance, AI is prone to hallucinations and bias. It will answer a question, but it's up to the user to make sure that answer is accurate. To use AI correctly, I would say we at Ipsos subscribe to 5 tenets. First, feed the AI engine with actual market research data. So for instance, some people would be prone to go into ChatGPT and just say, what are the top category needs related to laundry care? And it will give you an answer, but gosh, wouldn't that be a much better answer if you actually fed it with real market research data, social, qual, quant, all of it. The fresher, the better, obviously. So we subscribe to let's teach or train up the AI engine to answer the question correctly. Secondly, learn to ask the right questions, because there's a lot about prompt engineering that's important. So first, you need to understand what questions you really want to ask, and then the prompt engineer can figure out how to accurately ask it. Third is be able to trace back the information sources that you're getting from the AI platform to the actual information sources themselves. So for instance, if you get an answer from your AI engine and you ask, well, cite the sources for it. If it can't, or if it can't satisfy you on that, then don't use it. So we always want to make sure that we can trace all of the information we're getting back from our AI engine back to the original sources for accuracy. Fourth is we really subscribe to keeping humans at the center. So our model is human intelligence plus artificial intelligence, HI plus AI, which you could say is yay, I guess. But in any case, we've done our R&D on what humans do better, what AI does better, and what they do better together. And there's a lot that they do better together. But there's some things that humans do better than AI as well. And understanding that it's important. And using AI as an input to a project, not a decision making tool. We still want to put things through human testing and validation before, especially high risk decisions, before making any investment decisions. And lastly, fifth tenet is security, making sure that nothing of our clients gets past our firewalls. Everything in our AI engine comes in, nothing goes out. So it's very proprietary and safe. So I'd say those are our kind of marching orders when it comes to using AI.
Yeah, security such a big deal for AI and just as an overall consideration. Okay, I see that there have been some questions flowed in, so I appreciate that. I think we are going to run out of time for Q&A at the end. So if you do have any questions, please do submit those. We'll try our best to answer those via email and a follow-up. But Robert, I want to come over to you with just some career advice for researchers. So, as AI and machine learning are becoming more embedded in insights work, what skills should insights professionals focus on developing to stay relevant and provide value beyond what an AI can do?
Let me answer this in two parts. So first are some quick answers. You'll probably hear this from other people, but I want to make sure I say it out loud. There'll be a need for people with specialized skill sets, people who are experts in the data, the analytics, the modeling. There will also be a need for people who are really good business partners, right? People that are good at issue identification, asking the right questions. They have to be great at telling stories. And then related to storytelling, they will need to be great at influencing so that leaders take action with the insight. Now, here's the second part of the answer. So I have to be honest, I'm not an expert in AI. I don't even know how you guys found me for this, but you really challenged me. So I said, all right, I'm going to approach it like I've done other things. I need to really learn. So I took some time and I learned, but I kind of went a different route. I tried to understand what AI is not good at. We often hear all about what AI can do, but there is less discussion about the things it is not good at, with the idea that we can become great complements to AI. The best thing we can do is develop skills to complement AI abilities, because AI, it's on its way. So here's what I found. Number one challenge for AI, a lack of understanding and common sense. All right, that's my eggplant example. We can bring common sense, wisdom, and a more complete understanding of the real world. Not a big leap, because we often look at results of our research to make sure it makes sense. Number two, the absence of creativity and originality. Don't just deliver answers, provide real insight, better recommendations. Tap into your creative side to offer inspiration as you are being a great storyteller. Number three, data dependency and quality. Like the experiment I ran, it proved you have to have good data, good information for AI to really help you. So be great at understanding data quality, data sources, and the data content that feed the AI tools. Fourth thing I found, emotional intelligence and empathy. So AI can be trained to fake empathy, but it can't be truly empathetic. So be authentic, really care about, number one, your consumers, and number two, the impact your products will make on their lives. And the fifth one, ethical and moral decision making. I hope you won't need anything more here than lessons you learned when your mama raised you right.
Exactly.
Thanks. Dan, anything that you want to add to that with career advice and skills that people should be honing at this point?
Yeah, I think we're kind of coming to the close here based on time. So I'll end with this, and then I'll thank Wendy and Robert. But the reality is what Robert said is true, right? There's always going to be a need for smart people to make sense of kind of the lake of data that's out there. What I've found is and had the great experience working with a lot of people who just get stuff done, right? I think that's a lost art in some ways, right? It's if you can churn through and do the hard things, do the things you don't really want to, and learn from that, and learn how to get better at it. Like, those are skills that are valuable in any role, insights notwithstanding. Now, yeah, is the industry changing rapidly? Is the technology changing? Always has, right? But if you can be somebody who is seen as somebody who just gets things done and kind of can overcome those odds, that's always going to be beneficial to the peers around you, to the folks, up the chain. The other thing, and it's a little bit flippant, but start thinking like a CFO as well, and start thinking about that in the sense of, how do they make investments, right? How do they decide what in a company to invest in? And if you can understand how CFOs start to make their decisions on investment and where they see growth, I think that's a really helpful skill to understand that finance side of it, that I probably learned way too late in my career to be all that helpful. But I would say those two things. And I'll end with, and I'll kick it back to you, David, to kind of see us out. But just thank you to Wendy and Robert for making time. I know both of you are extraordinarily busy. You've got great clients to go serve, and you're doing some great work. I appreciate this. I appreciate all the help and support you've given to my career over the years, and just a fantastic way to spend an hour with two old friends. And just can't thank you enough. But David, if you want to bring us home, we'll like David said, we'll try to get any of the questions that are in the chat answered via email.
Yeah, and I'll just echo that. Robert, Wendy, and Dan, thank you so much for the time.
Yeah, thank you.
I know I certainly learned a lot, from your expertise, and I know that I trust our audience did as well. So, we did record this session, so you should see this in your inbox in just a couple of hours. So you'll be able to reference this and share it with colleagues if you so choose. We'll also just send some additional follow-up. And if you do have questions that we weren't able to get to today, just feel free to drop those in the chat now, and we'll do our best to get back to those. So thank you so much for joining, and be on the lookout for a few emails from us. And thanks again.
Thank you.